Liwei sat there, his gaze fixed on her, watching her carefully as if assessing every thought, every hesitation. She looked down at the letter and the pills again, and he spoke, his voice sharp and commanding, telling her to explain herself. He wanted every word, every choice she had made laid bare. His eyes bore into hers like a physical weight. Her voice trembled slightly as she began to speak, telling him that she only wanted to make him focus. His eyebrows narrowed at that single word, demanding more. She continued, her voice quivering yet determined, explaining that she thought he was becoming softer, weaker, because of her. That his softness threatened to compromise his mission. That the only way she could bring him back to the man he once was to break his heart, to remove herself from his life so he could regain his focus. At that, Liwei shot up from the bed, moving toward her with the precision and intensity of a predator. His hand cupped her face as he leaned in, and she could feel his unrelenting presence pressing down on her. His eyes locked onto hers, piercing, sharp, as he asked if the only option she could conceive was to run off to another man, to stand close to him, to even let him touch Hay. Moving even closer, his eyes still drilling into hers, he told her that she knew exactly what drove him crazy, seeing what was his, what belonged to him, being touched, claimed, or held by someone else. And yet, time and again, she seemed to ignore that truth and do the exact opposite. Amara looked up at him, her voice earnest and pleading, telling him that she only wanted to help him. What she had written was not real. She had not gone off with another man. The man he had seen was merely the coordinator of her academic boot camp, organized by her professor. Everything she had done was to protect him, to help him. Liwei's gaze sharpened, unrelenting, predatory, as if sizing up his prey. Finally, his voice cut through the tension, low and dangerous. The only thing he needed protection from was her not being around, from someone else daring to think they could have her, from going to bed without her beside him. He made it clear that she didn't need to think she could protect him. He knew exactly what he was doing. He moved even closer, and she instinctively shivered as his hand gripped her waist tightly, his fingers pressing possessively, intoxicatingly. He leaned in, and every movement radiated ownership. He told her she was his, and he wasn't asking for permission. He whispered that every part of her belonged to him, every breath, every thought. If she thought stepping away from him was protecting him or helping him, it wasn't. It was killing him, making him lose focus. His eyes bored into hers as he explained that she didn't fully understand him. Once he opened his heart to someone, there were consequences. And the consequence of loving him was that she was his, irrevocably stuck with him. He leaned in further, his voice low, admitting that perhaps he had been too soft, letting her forget who he was, what kind of man she was with. And now it was time to remind her, time to show her fully what it meant to be his, what it meant when he said she belonged to him. His thumb traced lightly along her neck, his gaze shifting into full predator mode, calculating, consuming. She could feel the surge of his dominance radiating through him, and in that instant, she knew. She knew she was about to witness a side of him he had been holding back, a side reserved only for her. The way he looked at her, the deliberate tracing of his thumb on her skin, the deliberate closeness, all of it sent a thrill surging through her, wild and uncontrollable. She closed her eyes, anticipation and desire coiling within her like a storm ready to explode. Amara stood there, keeping her eyes fixed on him, and in one swift motion he pulled her closer. He grabbed the back of her neck as he leaned in and deliberately sank his teeth into the curve of her neck, making her hitch and gasp. He continued holding her exactly where he wanted her, marking her with deliberate intensity. She could feel the difference. Before, he used to leave soft yet intense love bites on her skin, but this time he was not gentle. He sank his teeth into her as though he were a vampire, a predator. It was something new, something he had never done before. and she loved it. The intensity, the pressure, the way her entire body melted and willingly submitted to him. He did not stop. Each bite made her weaker, each press of his teeth unleashing something within her that she could not explain. He moved around the room with her, never letting go, never stopping. She held on to him, gasping for air, whispering that she was sorry, promising she would not run away again. In her scramble, she accidentally knocked a lamp to the floor, sending it crashing, but he ignored the noise completely and continued, teeth grazing her skin. He moved her toward the wall, and in their momentum, picture frames fell to the floor. Still, he did not let go. He held her firmly, marking her with the same intensity she could hardly comprehend. She knew he might have thought he was scaring her, punishing her, but all of it drew her closer. It made her weak, made her want him more. She wanted him right there, to feel him completely, to meet his intensity. She loved how mad he felt, the danger, the thrill, the bad boy fire inside him, the dominant man in full control. She loved all of him. Back in the living room, Kai and Ming exchanged glances as the sounds of breaking drifted through the walls. They could hear her gasping. Ming rose, clearly worried, but Kai stopped him, telling him to ignore it, assuring him that they were not fighting or hurting each other. Ming's worry lingered as he noted the crashing and the sound of her breaths, but Kai only laughed softly, telling him that he was still young and that while it sounded intense, they were engaged in an adult way of fighting. They should not be disturbed. Kai took a slow sip of his beer, calm, while Ming stared, astonished at what was unfolding before him. Back in the bedroom, Liwei finally slowed, sitting on the bed with Amara sitting his lap. His lips brushed over her neck as he softened the bites slightly, though he could still feel the raw intensity coursing between them. He looked at her slowly, his eyes sharp and unwavering, making it clear that what she had just felt was her first punishment for trying to push him away and for running off, believing she was helping him when he had repeatedly warned her never to leave his side. He picked up the pack of pills from the table and held them firmly, demanding she explain why she had taken them behind his back. He leaned in, low and commanding, making it unmistakably clear that her answer needed to satisfy him, or he would mark her entire body this time around. Amara's heart raced at the weight of his words. She traced her hand over the bites on her neck, imagining how weak she would feel if he did that across her entire body, when she had already been left breathless from just her neck. He kept his gaze locked on her, waiting silently for her answer. Finally, she revealed that she thought she might be pregnant. Liwei froze. The pills slipped from his hand, scattering across the bed, and he stared at her, eyes wide, trying to process the words that had just come from her mouth. Liwei looked at her, eyes sharp and fixed, demanding that she repeat what she had just said, as if the words might slip away before he fully understood. Amara met his gaze and told him that she thought she might be pregnant. She admitted she was afraid to take the test, and explained that this was why she had been taking the pregnancy prevention pills. She did not want a child just yet. She still had school, and they were not even married. She insisted that it was never her intention to hide the pills from him. Liwei barely heard her words. They seemed to blur as a single thought consumed him. The possibility that she was carrying his child, that they could have a baby together, that she might be carrying a child who would continue his bloodline, the one that had been wiped out. The thought that this child could be the continuation of him, the one thing he had told himself he would never do again, shook something deep inside him. He had planned for his bloodline to end with him, yet now an unfamiliar deep happiness stirred, a thrill he could not understand. He was happy, intensely so, that he might be a father, that he and Amara might have a family of their own. Slowly, almost instinctively, he placed his hand on her stomach and looked at her, searching her face. He asked if she still had the pregnancy test with her. She nodded, and his gaze sharpened. He told her they would take it together, that it was best to know so they could prepare for whatever came next. She hesitated, seeking reassurance, and he gave it, firm, commanding, unwavering. She nodded and retrieved the test from her handbag, walking toward the bathroom. Liwei remained in the room, pacing, anticipation simmering through him like a controlled storm. He thought about how he should be worried that he might be bringing another life into his already chaotic life. But there was no fear, only hope. Quietly, he hoped that the test would come back positive, even though he knew she did not want a child just yet. Meanwhile, Fang made his way to the room where his father was lying. He stood over him, pressing urgency into every word as he argued that something had to be done about Liwei. He reminded his father that Liwei had demoted him, reduced him to a mere operations manager, and turned him into a laughingstock. The situation could not continue. Liwei was out of control. His voice sharpened, recounting how he could not accept the position he had been given, how he was the rightful heir to East Gate Group, and how even the woman he was supposed to marry now had her eyes on Liwei. He swore that if his father would not act, he would take matters into his own hands, even if it meant killing Liwei with his own hands. Before he could move, his father grabbed his hand and pulled him closer. Fang leaned in, tense and impatient. His father whispered with measured authority that he should not act rashly. Someone above had everything under control. Any sudden move could destroy the carefully laid plan. The plan was unfolding smoothly, and in time, everything would return to the way it used to be. Fang's eyes widened at the implication, and when he confirmed that a plan to deal with Liwei was already in motion, relief and triumph spread across his face. He told his father that he trusted him and would wait. Back in the bedroom, Liwei waited, pacing as his mind raced. So many thoughts ran through him, but above all, anticipation surged. Finally, the bathroom door opened and Amara emerged, holding the pregnancy test in her hand. Liwei turned to her instantly, every nerve taut, every muscle alert. The room seemed to shrink around them. All the tension, all the anticipation focused on this single electrifying moment that would change everything. Liwei immediately walked over to Amara, his eyes fixed on her as he asked what the results were. Amara glanced at the pregnancy test, then back at him, and told him that she was not pregnant, a small smile of relief on her lips. Liwei's expression shifted at her words. He had expected a different answer. He studied her, noting the relief in her face, as if she hated the idea of carrying his child. He told her that she seems happy that she would not be tied to him. Without another word, he strode to the balcony, lighting a cigarette with precise, deliberate movements. He inhaled deeply, letting the smoke curl upward, exhaling slowly into the night. Amara watched him, reading the tension in his posture, sensing that he was far from satisfied with the results. She stepped closer, standing behind him, her voice low as she apologized for running away and hiding the pills, explaining that she had thought heartbreak would help him and mend things with Master Shen. Liwei did not look at her. He remained silent, smoking, the smoke wrapping around him like a shadow. Amara pressed on, telling him she hated having made him weak, insisting she did not want that. She added that if he needed to become cold, ruthless, and heartless to achieve his mission, she could accept that part of him. That was how much she loved him. She was ready to embrace every part of him. Liwei's gaze locked onto hers, unreadable and intense, the silence between them thick with unspoken tension. Then a low chuckle escaped him as he stepped closer, every movement deliberate, dominant. He met her gaze, asking if she truly wanted that part of him, the part that did not hesitate, the part that did not care. Amara held his gaze, steady and unwavering, and nodded, affirming that if that was the only way he could achieve his goals, she would accept that side of him. Liwei smirked, closing the space between them, pulling her closer, his eyes boring into hers, as he told her that she would get the man she wanted, that she had already won when she wrote the letter and ran away. Leaning closer, he told her that the man she wanted did things differently. His eyes searched hers as he asked if she would be willing to conform. Amara did not flinch. She nodded, knowing she wanted him to complete his mission, and if that meant accepting him as he was, she would. Liwei chuckled softly, amused by the innocence in her eyes, the mix of fear and softness that made him want her even more. He pulled her even closer, whispering, asking if she knew what men like him were called. Amara shook her head, waiting. His eyes remained locked on hers as he explained that men who liked control, who liked women to submit and obey their desires, were called dominants. Since she wanted that, she would be his prey, and he would be her predator. She would submit, follow his lead, and not run away as she had before. He made it clear that he would not hurt her with extreme measures. He only wanted her willing submission. Since she was willing, she would get the liwei she had been craving. Her heart raced as she nodded, agreeing. His eyes darkened, a dangerous glint igniting as he leaned in, whispering that she should mark him just as he had marked her earlier. She hesitated, but before she could speak, he scooped her up and carried her to the bed. He tore off his t-shirt, holding her close, and sank his teeth into her skin, guiding her to mark him in return. Their bodies moved together, wild and unrestrained, marking each other in a silent, possessive declaration. Amara leaned in, marking him, and he scoffed at the intensity, a growl escaping his lips. He pulled her closer, their bodies pressed together, and she gasped, hands tracing his back. They tumbled across the bed, every movement raw, dominant, and consuming. In the chaos, she accidentally knocked over the side lamp, sending it crashing to the floor, but he did not release her. His arms wrapped around her tightly, ensuring she could not escape. The intensity surged between them until a loud knock banged on the bedroom door, startling them both, leaving them suspended in the raw, unrelenting heat of the moment. Still holding her in his arms, Liwei turned toward the door, his breathing steady but his gaze unreadable. Before he could speak, Ming's voice came through from the other side, hesitant yet firm. He asked what Liwei was doing, urging him to take it easy on Amara. He said he understood that Liwei was angry because she had run away, but she might have had her own reasons. He added that he didn't know what kind of fight they were having, but the sound of things breaking and Amara gasping as though she were in pain was worrisome. Liwei and Amara exchanged glances, both unable to hold back a faint chuckle at Ming's concern. Ming continued, saying they had ordered food and that the two of them should come out and eat before it got cold. His footsteps faded down the corridor, leaving the room in quiet aftermath. Amara looked up at Liwei and asked softly if they had really been that loud. Liwei's eyes stayed locked on her as he brushed his thumb along her cheek, his tone low as he told her she had been loud. Embarrassed, Amara covered her face shyly, her cheeks flushing. Liwei's expression softened only slightly as he told her they should go and join Kai and Ming. Amara nodded. Meanwhile, Kai sat across from Ming, his tone laced with irritation, as he told him he was too stubborn. He reminded him that he had warned him to leave Liwei and Amara alone, but Ming had gone anyway. Ming, still uneasy, told him that it had sounded like they were killing each other, and he couldn't just sit and ignore it. Moments later, Amara and Liwei appeared, walking side by side and taking their seats beside each other. Kai and Ming's eyes immediately drifted to the visible bite marks scattered along both their necks and skin. The silence between them broke when Ming finally spoke, his tone filled with disbelief as he asked what kind of fight led to them biting each other like that. His gaze shifted to Amara's neck, asking why she had let him mark her so much. Liwei's lips curved faintly. He reached over, pulling Amara closer, his fingers tracing slowly over the marks he had left on her skin. Keeping his gaze fixed on her, he murmured that next time, he would go easy on her. He then leaned in, pressing a soft kiss against her forehead. Amara's face turned crimson, her body reacting instinctively to the tenderness in his dominant presence. Kai glanced at Ming with a knowing look, reminding him that he had warned him to stay out of lovers' affairs. This was just how they were, and clearly they both enjoyed it. Liwei reached for a bowl of pasta, twirling a forkful before lifting it to Amara's lips. She accepted it, then he took a bite himself. Across the table, Kai and Ming exchanged silent looks, stunned. Only hours ago, Liwei had returned handcuffed to her, and now they sat together, sharing food, marked with fierce signs of passion that neither tried to hide. The sound of Liwei's phone breaking the quiet pulled all eyes toward him. He picked it up, his expression shifting immediately as he read the message. The atmosphere grew tense. Without hesitation, he announced that it was time, that he had received a response and the exact location he was supposed to go to. Rising from his seat, he turned to Ming and asked if he was ready to move. Kai leaned forward, concern darkening his features. He said that what Liwei was planning sounded dangerous, that bringing his own doctor along proved he already knew there was a real possibility of being gravely injured. Amara's heart sank. She rose to her feet, worry written all over her face as she asked what was going on and what Kai meant. Liwei turned to her, his eyes cold and composed, and explained that he might finally catch the mastermind, that he had received a direct tip and a location. Amara's anxiety deepened. She asked if it would be dangerous, and why Ming had to go. Liwei said nothing at first, his silence speaking louder than words. She pleaded with him not to go if it meant risking his life, asking if Master Shen would be helping. At that, Liwei let out a quiet, bitter chuckle, his eyes narrowing slightly, as though the mention of that name amused him. He said nothing more, only stepping closer. He told her to stay behind with Kai, saying Kai would look after her. If he didn't make it back, Kai already knew what to do. Everything had been arranged. Amara's heart raced as she grabbed his hand, refusing to let go. She told him she wouldn't allow him to walk into danger alone. Liwei looked at her then, his expression shifting to the cold, ruthless composure she had once begged to see again. This was the man she had asked for. He reminded her of that, reminded her that she had agreed to submit to him, to let him take control, and that now she was to obey. He was commanding her to stay with Kai. Tears welled in her eyes as realization hit her. All his talk about dominance and submission had been more than passion. It had been a way to make sure she wouldn't stop him when this moment came. He had known what he was going to do, and he had made her promise submission, so she would not oppose him now. She tried to speak, but before she could, he crushed his lips against hers, silencing her protest. His kiss was firm, final. When he pulled away, his gaze softened for a fleeting second as he promised her he would come back. He pulled her close and held her tightly, his arms enveloping her completely. His breath brushed against her ear as he whispered that he had yet to marry her, that he intended to give her as many babies as possible, and that nothing would happen to him until that happened. Then he let her go. Without another word, he turned to Ming, who was already standing with his medical kit in hand. Together they walked toward the door. Liwei didn't look back. He couldn't. Looking back and seeing how sad she was would make him weak. Amara stood frozen, her heart breaking, tears streaming silently down her cheeks as she watched him leave. She had wanted the ruthless Liwei back, but now that he stood before her, fearless and unyielding, it shattered her to watch him walk into danger alone. In that moment, she couldn't help but wonder if she had made a mistake, wishing for his ruthless side to return. Kai walked over to Amara and handed her a tissue, his voice calm but firm as he told her to wipe away her tears. She took it with trembling hands and quietly dabbed at her face, her eyes red and heavy from crying. Kai watched her for a moment before speaking again, telling her not to worry, that Liwei was far too smart to walk blindly into danger. He assured her that Liwei would never act without a plan, that he would come back soon, and that she shouldn't cry. Amara looked up at him as she wiped her cheeks, her voice breaking as she confessed that they had only just reunited, and now this was happening again. She whispered that all she wanted was for everything to end, for the chaos to stop so they could finally live as a normal couple. Kai exhaled deeply, his expression softening. He told her to trust Liwei, reminding her that he would never allow anything to happen to himself, knowing she wouldn't be able to live on without him. He said Liwei was always several steps ahead, and that he believed with certainty that he would return safely. But she had to trust him, too. Amara stared at him for a moment before asking if he had known about this all along, if he already knew Liwei was going to do something this dangerous. Kai nodded slowly. He admitted that he did know, that Liwei had told him, and that was the reason he had chosen to go along, to stand by his side no matter what. He explained that he hadn't known about Ming's involvement until earlier, when Ming mentioned he would also be accompanying Liwei on the mission. He stepped closer, his tone gentler now as he told her to breathe, to relax, to take a deep breath and calm herself down. Liwei would be okay. Amara nodded faintly, clutching the tissue in her hands as she tried to steady herself, forcing herself to believe Kai's words even as fear gnawed at her chest. Meanwhile, Liwei and Ming pulled over at the location. The atmosphere was heavy, tension thick between them. Ming turned to look at Liwei, concern written across his face, his brows furrowed. He asked if Liwei was really sure about doing this. What if it was a trap? What if they had lured him there intentionally to kill him? Liwei's gaze remained steady as he told Ming that it wouldn't happen. The worst, he said, was that he might be injured, and that was why he had asked Ming to come with him. He explained that if he were gravely hurt, he would press the signal on his location band to alert him, and that Ming should do everything in his power to get to him. Ming kept his eyes fixed on him, his mind racing, clearly torn. He urged Liwei to give up on this revenge mission, saying that he understood the need for justice, that Liwei wanted to avenge his family, but that it could cost him his life. He reminded him that he had already taken over East Gate Group, that he had a beautiful and extraordinary woman by his side, and that they could start anew together, leaving the past behind. Liwei let out a quiet chuckle, his lips curving faintly as he looked at Ming. He told him that if he were in his position, he would understand exactly why he couldn't give up. Not now. Not after everything. There was no turning back. He looked down at his phone, his expression turning focused, his tone low as he said it was time. He repeated the instructions. If he got injured, he would press his location signal, and Ming was to come for him. He gave him a small, genuine smile and thanked him for doing this for him, for being there when he needed him. He told him that he appreciated it before turning and walking away. Ming watched him go, his heart pounding, dread heavy in his chest. Every step Liwei took toward that building felt like one step closer to something irreversible. He knew he couldn't just leave him, not now. Liwei was more than a friend. He was his brother, his family. And even though he didn't agree with his choices, he would still do anything for him. That was how deeply he valued and cherished their bond. Liwei's footsteps echoed as he approached the massive shadowed building. The air was cold and sharp, filled with an eerie stillness. As he entered through the main doors, he noticed the place was heavily guarded. Every corner was patrolled, every movement watched. Before he could step further, several guards approached, their faces expressionless as they began searching him thoroughly, stripping him of every possible weapon. One demanded a code. Liwei pulled out his phone and displayed it. After verifying it, one of the guards stepped closer and placed a blindfold over his eyes. They led him forward, their grip firm on his arm. He felt the smooth steel doors of an elevator close around them, and instead of rising, it began to descend, slowly, steadily. Time seemed to stretch. He stood in silence, the motion humming beneath his feet, feeling the descent go on far longer than it should have. He realized then that this was not just a building, it was a fortress. The mastermind's base was hidden deep underground, fortified and unreachable, a place of power and secrecy. The realization only hardened his resolve. Whoever this man was, however powerful he might be, Liwei was ready to face him, ready to end it, ready to take his life with his own hands and make him pay for the years of pain he had caused. Finally, the elevator came to a stop. He heard the metallic slide of doors opening, followed by the sharp click of boots against the floor. One of the guards spoke curtly, saying they had arrived. They led him out, their movements deliberate, the echo of their footsteps reverberating through the sterile underground corridor. The air grew heavier, denser, charged with an unseen force, the kind of stillness that only existed in the presence of someone truly powerful. Liwei straightened his posture, his breathing steadying. Every step brought him closer to the heart of danger. But he didn't waver. Not once. He was ready to face the man responsible, ready to kill him with his bare hands no matter what it took. Liwei and his escort stood there. The air was tense and thick. He took a seat and waited. The whole place was silent, very silent. Finally, he felt footsteps approaching. They carried weight and power. They stopped halfway through, and then a voice, not like a human voice, but altered and robotic, told him to remove his blindfold. Slowly, he removed the blindfold. He sat there, and his eyes fell on a man sitting behind a transparent curtain. He could not see him clearly, but he could tell the man's face was covered with a mysterious mask. He observed him carefully, trying to decipher who he was, trying to take in every part, but he could not see clearly. Finally, the man broke the silence. His voice was still robotic, not his real voice, and he asked why Liwei had wanted to see him and said that he had received a code requesting a meeting. Liwei told him not to act surprised, that he already knew it was him, and that he must also know why he had come. Leaning forward, his expression dark and unrelenting, Liwei said he was there to take the man's life and make him pay for what he had done to his family, to make him feel what his father, mother, and little sister felt when they were burned alive like animals. The masked man laughed. He said he liked Liwei's courage and found the idea that he thought he could kill him easily ridiculous. He admitted that he indeed knew it was Liwei requesting the meeting, and that he had wanted to see the young man who dared stand up against him, the young man who had taken over East Gate Group and gone after his enemies. He said he had been watching him, and that he was proud of how he had played the chess game he had laid so perfectly. Liwei felt the urge to rush forward and finish him once and for all, but he knew he needed to be patient. The fact that the masked man had let him in so easily meant the man was prepared, too. He kept his composure, and with a cold, firm voice, he asked him if he was the one behind what had happened to his family, if he had orchestrated everything. The man laughed and taunted him for asking when he seemed so sure, and then he confirmed it. He had orchestrated everything, from the fire to taking over East Gate Group. Hearing that, Liwei felt his heart tighten. His eyes darkened, and the urge to bolt forward and kill him surged through him. He could feel his blood boil. He wanted to end him. Still, he kept himself composed. He still needed to find out who the man behind the mask truly was, whether it was Master Shen or someone else. Deep down, he prayed it was not Master Shen, but he knew anything was possible. Whoever hid behind that mask would be the one to cause the most pain to him, either because of the man's identity or simply because he was a stranger hungry for power. Breaking the silence, the masked man asked Liwei, since he had finally met the person he had been looking for, how he planned to kill him. He laughed and said he could not wait to see how liwei would kill him, that he was ready for it. Liwei replied without wavering. He stated that if the masked man wanted to know how he would die, he should take off his mask and show his face so he could look him in the eyes when he killed him. He added that hiding behind a mask and a fake voice made the man a coward, not as powerful as he pretended to be, and that if he were truly powerful, he would face him man to man without hiding. The masked man laughed at that and snapped his fingers. Guards carrying guns and weapons entered and placed them before liwei. The man told liwei that he was giving him a chance to kill him, that he could use whatever weapon he wanted and should not hesitate. He added that if liwei succeeded in killing him, he would unmask him to find out who he was. If liwei failed, he would die in that building and never be seen again. Liwei sat looking at the weapons before him, wondering what the man was playing at. He thought about how, regardless of the masked man's sinister intentions and plans, he was not going to leave that place without his head. If necessary, he would burn the whole building down and die there with him. Meanwhile, Ming sat in the car, glancing at his phone and wondering what was taking liwei so long. He became anxious at the thought of the worst, but he forced himself to stay composed. He did not want to give in to those thoughts. He kept telling himself liwei was smart and well-prepared. Back inside the building, the masked man taunted liwei, asking if he would go through with it. The man reminded him that this was the chance he had waited 10 years for and mocked him for holding back. He laughed and called him a coward, saying he had heard how ruthless liwei was and was disappointed to see weakness now. He shouted that liwei should do it, claiming responsibility for blasting liwei's family, admitting he had instructed someone to activate the gas and turn them to ash. He added that things had not gone according to plan when liwei survived and returned for revenge. Still, he said, this meeting was liwei's chance and he should not hesitate. Liwei felt his head spin as he glanced from the weapons to the man. The ease of the offer made him suspect a trap. Either the person behind the mask was not who he claimed to be, or he was hiding something. Liwei decided to play along with the man's game. He rose to his feet, grabbed a gun, and pointed it at the masked figure. The man mocked him for the move and urged him to shoot. Liwei moved closer, the gun still leveled, and ordered the man to step from behind the curtain and show himself. The man stood and walked forward. Liwei watched each step, absorbing every movement. For a moment, a strange familiarity brushed liwei, an energy he could not place, as if they had crossed paths before. He wondered if it could be Master Shen behind the mask. The man stepped even closer and shoved liwei, forcing the barrel against his chest and daring him to fire. He warned that this might be liwei's only chance, and that if liwei failed, he would die instead. Liwei stood steady, gaze cold and unflinching. He inched closer and slowly pressed the trigger, a measured movement as if he were ready to shoot. Then, with one swift motion, he produced a small dart from beneath his shoe and drove it into the man's chest. The masked figure stumbled and lost his balance. Liwei seized the moment. He grabbed the man and ripped the mask away. The man snapped his head aside. At that instant, the lights went out and the whole place fell into darkness. Liwei looked around, but the masked man was gone. He had vanished into the black. Outside, Ming sat with his chest rising and falling from anxiety. He thought about going in himself, but he held back. It was too dangerous. Then the first gunshots rang out from inside the building. The sounds jolted him. His eyes widened as he imagined the worst. What if liwei had been struck down? What if he had been gunned down in there? Meanwhile, Amara sat in the living room, constantly glancing at the time, hoping for a text or a call from liwei. But there was nothing. She grabbed a glass of water to calm herself down, but it slipped from her hands, crashing to the floor and shattering. She immediately stood, and Kai came rushing to her, asking if she was okay. Amara glanced at the broken glass pieces scattered across the floor and looked back at Kai, telling him that she thought Liwei was not okay, that she could feel it, she could sense it. Something might have happened to him. She moved closer, her voice trembling, telling Kai that they should go find him, that something was wrong. But Kai moved closer and told her to calm down, that Liwei would be back. He reminded her that Liwei had promised he would return, and he would keep that promise. Noticing that she was trembling, he gently told her to relax. He moved even closer, his tone steady, as he began massaging her head, telling her he had learned about acupressure points during his time in Korea, and that massaging her head would help her calm down. He told her to breathe, to remember who her man was, that he was Liwei, and no one could kill him unless he wanted to be killed. Amara nodded slowly as she felt herself relax, calming down under Kai's touch. Liwei, meanwhile, struggled to walk. The whole place was dark and filled with thick, toxic gases. He pulled off his t-shirt and wrapped it around his mouth and nose so he wouldn't inhale the fumes. He vowed that he would not leave that place until he found the man. He knew the man was injured. He had to still be in the building. He moved through the corridors, holding up his cell phone torch in one hand and his gun in the other, scanning every corner for any sign of movement. He thought about how he couldn't lose him like this. Not when he was so close. Then his eyes caught something on the walls, small sockets blinking red, lined up in a sequence. He moved closer and realized they were bombs. The entire building was strapped with explosives, a countdown flashing. He stood there, his expression tightening as he realized the place was about to be blown apart in minutes. The man was serious. He had meant every word when he said Liwei would die there if he failed to kill him. Liwei bolted toward the elevator. He had to get out before the whole building exploded. He knew they had probably already escaped. This had been a trap, just as he had anticipated. He reached the elevator and pressed the buttons repeatedly. The doors slid open. He stepped in and hit the panel again and again. Nothing. The elevator wouldn't move. The faint beeping from the bombs grew louder, faster. Seconds were all he had left. He kicked the door, trying to force it open, but it was jammed. The whole place was plunged in suffocating darkness. Meanwhile, Ming sat in the car, waiting and watching, silently praying that Liwei would come out. Finally, the gate opened, and he noticed a group of men rushing into their cars. His instincts sharpened. He immediately grabbed his cell phone and began recording, snapping pictures as the cars sped by. In one of the vehicles, he saw a man wearing a mysterious face mask. Ming zoomed in, catching him as the man reached up, beginning to remove the mask. The car drove off, but Ming kept recording. He managed to capture a glimpse of his side profile, just enough to see part of his face. He sat there, frowning, wondering what was happening and why Liwei still hadn't come out. Inside, Liwei was still struggling with the door, glancing at his watch. Time was almost up. The bombs were now beeping faster, a shrill warning that only seconds remained. As he tried one last time to pry the door open, he felt someone from the outside pushing against it. Finally, the door gave way, and a hand reached out toward him. "Get out!" the voice shouted. "This place is about to blow up any second now!" Liwei grabbed the hand and stepped out, and then froze. His entire body stiffened when he saw who it was. It was Master Shen. He wanted to confront him, to demand answers, but there was no time. The building was seconds from exploding. Master Shen tightened his grip on Liwei's hand and bolted, pulling him along through the corridors as the walls behind them erupted in fire. The explosions roared, debris flying as flames chased them down the hall, but Master Shen didn't let go. Outside, Ming sat in the car when the entire building exploded, the blast wave shaking the ground beneath him. He jumped out, eyes wide, shouting Liwei's name. His knees buckled as he dropped to the ground, screaming, tears running down his face. He thought it was over, that Liwei was gone, that his friend had been blown to pieces. "I'm sorry," he choked out, voice breaking. "I'm sorry for not going in to save you. I was a coward. I should have gone in. I should have saved you." But then, through the smoke and flame, Liwei emerged. He walked out slow but steady, followed by Master Shen. Liwei's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. "Stop acting like a woman," he said coldly. "Man up. Didn't I tell you? If I don't want to die, I won't." Ming immediately stood on his feet and rushed to him, pulling him into a tight hug. His voice trembled as he said that he really thought Liwei was gone. He then looked over at Master Shen, who stood a few feet away, and asked him when he had gotten there. Master Shen walked over to Liwei, his expression unreadable, and asked if he was okay, if they had injured him in any way. Liwei looked at him silently, saying nothing, his eyes dark and suspicious. His mind was racing with too many thoughts. Why was Master Shen suddenly there? How did he know this place? At that moment, Liwei thought about the possibility that Master Shen might be the mastermind behind everything. He couldn't trust him, not at all. Still looking at him, Master Shen told Liwei that he wasn't thinking straight, that he was foolish to think he could handle such a dangerous man on his own. He reminded him that he had warned him before. The man he was dealing with was powerful and ruthless, and clearly he had lured him there to kill him. Shen added that if he hadn't shown up early, Liwei would have been blown up inside that building, repeating the same tragedy that had happened to his family. Liwei kept his eyes locked on him, his expression cold and sharp. He took a step closer and asked, his voice low, how Master Shen knew he was in Beijing, and how he knew the exact location to find him. Without hesitation, Master Shen grabbed Liwei's cell phone and turned it around, showing him a small chip stuck to the back. He told him that when they had last met, he had bugged his phone on purpose because he thought Liwei was acting strangely, and because he was worried that he might do something reckless, just like what had happened today. Liwei looked at him carefully, studying his every move. At that point, he didn't trust him at all. He knew that Master Shen was both intelligent and cunning, and that every word coming out of his mouth could be calculated. Pure manipulation. Without saying a word, Liwei snatched his cell phone back and told him to stay away from him. Then, glancing at Ming, he told him they should go. Both men got into the car and drove off, leaving Master Shen standing alone, watching as the car disappeared into the distance. Back in the car, Ming glanced at Liwei, who sat deep in thought, his face expressionless. Ming exhaled and said quietly that Liwei had really scared him, that for a moment he truly thought he was dead. Liwei turned to him briefly and said that he doesn't die that easily. He thanked Ming for waiting for him and not leaving. Ming smiled and told him that they were friends, and that's what friends are for. Still looking at him, Ming asked if Liwei really suspected Master Shen of being the mastermind, and pointed out that Master Shen had walked through the bombs to save him. He said he didn't think Master Shen could be that evil. Liwei's voice was calm but firm, as he said that Master Shen was cunning, that he was very smart, and that anything was possible. He added that he couldn't afford to let his guard down. Ming asked him if he had seen the mastermind. Liwei remained silent for a moment, before finally saying that the man had worn a mask, that he couldn't see his face or recognize his voice. But he did feel a strange sense of familiarity in his presence, as if they had met before. Then he added, quietly but with conviction, that he would see him again soon. Ming turned to him, confused, and asked what he meant. Liwei let out a small, dark laugh and said that he had stabbed the man with a poisoned arrowhead, and that he was the only one with the antidote. If he wants to live, he said coldly, he'll come crawling back to me. Ming smiled as he looked at him and told him that he was really smart. Finally, they pulled up to the penthouse. Amara, who had been standing by the door, immediately rushed toward the car.